Once I was on stage with an actor dancing to her speech from Peter Pan. After several tries, she said, "Don't move. They won't hear me." Under a huge banyan tree in the south end of Ubud, I was standing by a crowd of about 20 men, all talking to each other in a really animated way. Several of them had roosters and were stroking them head to tail and lunging them at each other, goading. The men huddled around a block and started to place their bets on the wood. Money, arguing, more stroking, probably the same rhythm everywhere. There was a lull, an impasse. More impulsive betting, and finally the fight started. The circle emptied, the two cocks were lowered to the dirt. They looked at each other. One cock turned and walked away. In a flash, its owner scooped it up, threw it down on the block, chopped its feet off, stuffed its head into a cloth bag that come to you for liquor bottles, and drove off on his scooter, humiliated. The circumstance did not allow for conscientious objection. There was a lull, an impasse. More impulsive betting, and finally the fight started.
We had a date to perform a 50 dance lab in Toronto. At the time, I was confused about the nature of dance making as I had known it, and wanted to do the performance, but not in any way I'd been in performance.
Under a huge banyan tree in the south end of
It was a large teeter-totter, 12 feet high, wide base, long plank across the fulcrum.
The men huddled around the block and started to place their bets on the wood.
Like it needed a garden, so we bargained with the landscapers at Imperial Oil to have the pansies and the grass at their monthly change of gardens.
Probably the same rhythm everywhere.
Sarah Mann and I hung upside down on the underside of the plank of the teeter-totter, facing the grass and the flowers.
Finally, the fight started.
When first strapped in, we were totally balanced.
The two cocks were put down and looked at each other.
Dangerous, but wasn't it? We found, though, when our minds wandered, it became so. We had to pay attention to hold it in balance, to keep from diving face first into the flowers.
Silence.
One year we showed the exhibition in the lobby at the NAC.
One cock turned and walked away.
I got a phone call afterwards from a presenter in the prairies who wanted it for a festival.
In a flash, his owner.
I said, okay. He called back and said, would it be all right if it was painted pink? I said, think about it. He called back and said, what about a white picket fence around the flowers?
Threw it down on a block and chopped its feet off, stuffed it in a cloth bag.
He said, I don't think so.
Drove off on his scooter, humiliated.
He said, but I'll do it on my own. I've already seen it.
The circumstance did not allow for conscientious objection.
In 1968, Nubia was flooded to make Lake Nasser and the Aswan Dam.
We had a date to perform under a huge banyan tree in the south end of Toronto.
UNESCO dismantled Ramses II tomb because it was also in the way and rebuilt it at Abu Simbel beside the lake.
12 feet high, wide base, long plank across the fulcrum.
Ramses, another egomaniac, had constructed the temple of his tomb in such a way that on his birthday, the first ray of sunrise would fall on the statue of himself first, and only afterwards the two gods sitting beside him.
And lunging them at each other, goading.
When UNESCO moved the tomb,
It looked like it needed a garden, so we bargained with the landscapers at Imperial Oil to have the pansies.
the reconstruction was exact, but they missed Ramsey's birthday.
Probably the same rhythm everywhere. There was a lull.
In the minibus leaving Lake Nasser, I was sitting next to a beautifully dressed Nubian man. We talked about his lost country. He said it remained in photographs, and everyone from his village knew who held the photographs at what time.
All really talking in an animated way. Several of them had roosters.
Only about an hour from Abu Simbel, in the middle of the Sahara, there was a makeshift police checkpoint.
It looked dangerous, but wasn't. We found that when our minds wandered, it became so. We had to pay attention to hold it.
With their machine guns, the police searched the minibus and discovered an illegal fish taken from Lake Nasser.
Who wanted it for a festival?
It belonged to the Nubian man.
Silence. The two cocks looked at each other.
Rather than let the Egyptian police have the fish, the man took it, left the bus, and quietly walked into the desert.
One cock turned and walked away. In the mid-90s, a group of us did research with the eyes for a dance, later called Not Only But Also. After several months, we found that each place we went to with the eyes brought about a similar range of images, of movements, and of feelings in the dancers. One day, we tried working with a new eye position. All 7 dancers found images, feelings, or movements referencing death. I found this information interesting. It felt that we'd come the closest we could to in dance to making objective evidence. But I didn't know what to do with it. The dance wasn't about death, so we left it. Forbidden ground. However, I was in a class in Berkeley and I presented this material to the students and teachers. One student came back months later, having written a paper about it. Her findings took us to the next stage. She practiced bodywork with people feeling suicidal. And after hearing about our research, she started to notice the same tendency of the eyes in her clients. She went further and found that it was a result of a tilt in the sphenoid bone that caused the eyes to focus in that direction. The beautiful glider bone behind the nose was banking. Please take your blindfolds off. At the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, performers dance advertisements in late-night bars to lure audiences. I arrived at midnight to the designated bar, a building a bit like Hogwarts dining hall. Everyone was drinking and the noise was deafening. There was a stand-up comic and they roared throughout the whole routine. Suddenly I saw a dancer. Bien sûr, le bon café, tu ne comprends, c'est la bonne fatigue que l'on prend, si carbonate, on fait le petit gober. I wondered what was she going to do in all this cacophony. She began dancing, and I could see from her mouth, moving, that she was talking. It took nothing. About 10 seconds. Nothing. About 10 seconds. And the room fell totally silent.